Hello everyone and welcome. We have a lot to say. This video isn't just talking about Age of Clams and Breath of the Wild rumors. Well, this isn't technically a rumor, just something I've been saying is going to happen soon, and we already have signs of to help support it. But also, we're covering confirmed news from Nintendo, as well as a Breath of the Wild 2 theory towards the end of this video. If you support us on Patreon, you have early access to news and rumor videos, and probably already seen our next big Zelda Breath of the Wild 2, Ocarina of Time HD, and Twilight Princess HD rumor video, as well as our rumors on Metroid Prime 4 and our next big Zelda theory video. For those of you who aren't Patreon supporters or channel members, it should be up the day after this video. Nintendo has updated their online servers. At first, you may think it might not mean much for you, but if we pair this with some statements from Aonuma and the president of Nintendo, it could mean big things, not just for Zelda, but other games as well. This is something we have discussed a little on our podcast, the 𝐓𝐳𝐬𝐭𝐚𝐠𝐫, but I wanted to go a bit more in depth. This video was actually meant to go out last week, a couple of days before that podcast aired, but as you know with yesterday's Breath of the Wild 2 rumor video, everything got delayed for a bit. So here we are, and now this went from a theory video to a confirmed news video. We actually already have games being updated. The first big game that received true online multiplayer instead of just local multiplayer for the main board is Mario Party on Switch. We have been talking about games receiving online multiplayer updates for a while now, but I personally didn't think it was going to happen this soon. What is interesting is that basically every Dynasty Warriors game, and even crossovers on most consoles, have full online co-op and multiplayer, all except the crossovers on Nintendo. It isn't that they didn't take the time to develop multiplayer or co-op modes. Hyrule Warriors, Fire Emblem Warriors, Age of Calamity all have multiplayer, and we know every other Dynasty Warrior game and spin-off has online multiplayer. So the developers are used to adding online functions. So it's definitely not that they were just lazy in development and didn't want to add it, like a lot of people are saying. It has to be a technical reason, especially with how poor the normal co-op ran on Hyrule Warriors. We also have Nintendo's president saying in multiple interviews that are months and years apart that a big part of the future for Nintendo will be adding to their online service. They also said not just new, but older big titles will be updated with new DLC and online support. For those who don't think Age of Clams is big enough, it sold well over 3 million copies in the first few days of release. That is insane. For perspective, that is almost as much or more than the entire lifetime sales of any of the GameCube and Wii U Zelda games, which includes Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, and even Four Swords Adventures on GameCube, Wind Waker HD, Twilight Princess HD, and even Breath of the Wild and the original Hyrule Warriors on Wii U. And remember, they felt Hyrule Warriors on Wii U and 3DS was so popular and sold so well that they kept developing and releasing DLC packs over and over. And if you include the Wii U, 3DS, and Switch versions of Hyrule Warriors, all three put together across 3 different consoles sold less than 2 million copies in their entire lifetime. Now, in just a few days, Age of Calamity sold this well and is now close to, if not already past, 4 million. So with a game that has sold so well, has updates and 2 big DLC packs, and probably just like the original Hyrule Warriors, will have a 3rd and 4th DLC pack announced after the release of the first set. Why wouldn't this game already have online support? Which honestly would make it sell even more copies, especially for the people who may not be interested in playing it themselves, but would purchase it to play with a friend online. This is why I have been saying for months now that I 100% believe Age of Clams will receive either a free online update to add multiplayer, which we recently seen happen with Mario Party, despite people telling me I was wrong and Nintendo would never go back and add online updates to an older game. And if not a free update, I could see it being added as a bonus for one of the DLC packs. This would not only make more people buy the game to play online with their friends, but would also give a huge boost to the DLC sales. So here's my personal theory. A lot of people have been saying because Zelda has a shorter hairstyle in Breath of the Wild 2, that is a sign she will be playable. We 100% do believe she will be playable, but we don't think her short hairstyle has anything to do with it. We can find countless games, even some from Nintendo, where a character has long hair and is playable. I mean, if we use common sense, in Breath of the Wild 1, Link could change his hair in many styles, lengths, and wear different hats or accessories. If Zelda is playable in Breath of the Wild 2, it is most likely that she will also have various different outfits that will also change her hair in many different lengths and styles as well. Plus, not long after people started saying she had short hair because Nintendo wants her to be playable, Age of Clams was announced. Not only does Zelda have long hair and is playable, but several other playable characters also have long hair. Personally, I think this is simply Nintendo wanting to update her appearance. Possibly show some time has passed, enough for Zelda to have some time for herself, and have her hair cut, instead of only focusing on restoring Hyrule, like she would be if it was only days or probably even weeks after Breath of the Wild. We know how devoted Zelda is to saving Hyrule and helping people, immediately after basically coming back to life from a 100-year still or imprisonment, then defeating Ganon, and probably remembering that it has been 100 years and that everyone she knew or was friends with is probably dead unless they're of a different race or took some magic potion. With all of that, instead of taking a moment to herself to rest, eat, or anything, she immediately tells Link they need to go check on the King of the Zoras because she senses the divine beast is acting weird. So I think her having a different hairstyle is supposed to be a way for Nintendo to just nod to the players that a few weeks or enough time has passed, so that Zelda felt she could take time off from ruling Hyrule to have some quality me time. Because remember, the king is a spirit boy and not alive. So she is literally in charge of the entire kingdom, and not just restoring the monarchy or government, but literally rebuilding all of Hyrule and its dozens of destroyed towns and villages. For those who don't know, the reason you've seen so many people complain about Nintendo's online servers is because they have been using the same servers since the 3DS. You may have noticed when you're playing games like Pokemon Sword and Shield, even if you're playing right next to your friend with perfect Wi-Fi, if your friend moves, it still takes what seems like half a second before their character actually moves on your screen. Even games like Super Smash Bros. For Switch has a lot of people complaining about lag or random occurrences. All of that is hopefully being fixed. The president of Nintendo announced a while back that they were going to put a huge focus on their online service and DLC for new and older games. We didn't 100% know what they meant, but when the server update was announced, it all came together. And that seems to be exactly what happened with Mario Party. We also have Aonuma, who has been saying for years in multiple interviews that he wants to create a big multiplayer Zelda game, specifically taking the online multiplayer of Triforce Heroes and combining it with the engine from Breath of the Wild. Now, I know you may start thinking about Age of Clams, but no, Breath of the Wild 2 online multiplayer. But really quick, personally, I could see Age of Clams getting an online multiplayer update first. I actually do believe Breath of the Wild 2 will be multiplayer as well. Even the original Breath of the Wild was meant to be multiplayer, believe it or not. One of the very first things Aonuma ever said about the game was that he didn't want the player to think of it as a single player experience. And as I'm sure you've seen from playing the game, it is 100% a single player experience. So something happened there to make them go from a multiplayer game to Breath of the Wild being a single player game. And I think the online servers were the reason. One of the very first things Aonuma ever said about the game was that he didn't want the player to think of it as a single player experience. This is where you've heard me say that. I think this is where the WolfLink function came in. Originally, I think it was meant to be controlled by a second player or the game's AI. However, either due to poor online functions or the Wii U or Switch having issues with it, they scrapped the multiplayer concept and we were stuck with just the AI controlling WolfLink. However, it would be the perfect way to introduce multiplayer. Wolf-Link is 100% completely optional and is not required for anything. You can 100% Breath of the Wild without ever even looking or summoning Wolf-Link. Wolf-Link is 100% completely optional and is not required for anything. If Breath of the Wild 2 has multiplayer like this, it would solve the biggest issues fans have with the multiplayer Zelda games. They don't want Triforce Heroes and Four Swords Adventures puzzles where they are forced to play multiplayer. Having the multiplayer completely optional would be an easy fix. This could come in the form of playing as a second Link. Whether we play as a second Link, a random Sheikah, Castle Guard, Impa, Zelda, a champion, or whoever. Comment below and let me know who you would love to play as. And I'm thinking Hyrule Warriors Age of Clams could have actually been a sort of testing ground for Breath of the Wild 2's online multiplayer. Sort of like how certain game mechanics were tested in previous Zelda games before they were brought up to a newer Zelda game and expanded on, like leveling up your gear or breaking your shields in Skyward Sword. Obviously the sprinting meter, all of which made their way to Breath of the Wild. Before we go, I want to give a huge thank you to everyone, especially our Patreon supporters at patreon.com/GameOverJesse. That's it for now, but a lot of rumors, news, and details are slowly leaking out, so please stay subscribed and notified, and join our Discord to make sure you stay up to date on all Zelda Breath of the Wild 2 news. And you can find our Zelda podcast, the 𝐓𝐼𝐧𝐬𝐭𝐭𝐞𝐫, here on YouTube and on iTunes, where we have had many guests who have worked on the Zelda series and have shared a lot of amazing stories about voice acting, such as Patricia Somerset voice acting as Zelda, Mike Drucker on Zelda's writing or translation team, coming up with the jokes in the game, stories behind the names of characters that he created. Please subscribe and let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you. If you are a fan of our Zelda videos like this, Zelda Theories, our Zelda podcast, the 𝐓𝐼𝐧𝐬𝐭𝐭𝐞𝐫 on iTunes, we would all really appreciate your support at patreon.com/GameOverJesse. That and buying our t-shirts will get you and your YouTube or Twitch a shout out every week on our 𝐓𝐼𝐧𝐬𝐭𝐭𝐞𝐫. And if you send in a photo of yourself in our GameOverJesse or 𝐓𝐼𝐧𝐬𝐭𝐭𝐞𝐫 t-shirt, we can use it for promotion at the end of some of our videos.